Salutations, Legion of Doom. Welcome to Podcaster Storm, where social podcasts, crazy riddles, and all around nerds convene, talk, and debate all things pop culture. With me, as always, is my co-host, the Nerdy Occultist, aka the Authenticator, Dalton L. Mortimer.
Hello and good evening, everyone. It's a
And
relatively light week this week, I think, kind of.
more or less, weirdly enough, there wasn't anything too, nothing stupid,
I,
nothing
I think
too.
I think because the news cycle is mostly preoccupied with political shenanigans at the moment because of debate and things.
Right, and I am your host last time. I want to be the brainstorm of pop culture. How's everyone doing tonight?
I'm doing okay. Although now I can't stop thinking about Dr. Fate because we were discussing Black Adam before the show started, and now I can't
Right.
stop thinking about Dr. Fate.
So obviously, I'm going to continue this announcement until the second week where it will be implemented, but we are going to be shifting the day that we do a podcast of the Storm uh, episodes to Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, just simply because I have recently started a job that is first shift, and I just do not feel like I do not want to stop like the hundreds of rants and sidebars and other things we do just simply for a timetable that we have on Sunday. So I just feel like it is necessary to uh, for us to shift it to Saturday. Um,
Also, speaking of timetables and things, the second, or rather the third and fourth week of July and into August, we might end up having to move it around again anyway, just by virtue of the fact that I have plans related to my birthday, and this year those plans involve a thing called Penzik, and it lasts for 2 weeks. And I don't know how much of it I'm actually going to be doing or not doing, but rest assured that there may at least be 1 week where we have to move it, if not 2. So there's that.
yeah, we'll try our best to keep everyone informed. Obviously, um, though I also want to mention this because sometimes this may happen. It happened this week that I was called in for mandatory overtime at my work. So there may be days when that happens, like if we keep when we keep it on Saturday, that I may be a little tired when we start the show.
Or we may just have to move it back to Sunday, depending.
Well, again, I get off around. I get off in the early afternoon, so I will be able to make the show on Saturday. I just again, I will be somewhat tired.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, I've always been tired, so.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, on with your regularly scheduled podcast, The Storm. This concludes the relevant public service announcements.
Right, and again, I'll just final thing. I will also be posting the same thing I had sent last week regarding a announcement of the change, so everyone is aware.
Mhm.
So fun fact, Dalton only posted one thing, only gave one thing for this podcast this week.
You sure it was only one?
I think so. Hold on, let me check.
Because I could have sworn there were two, although I know also there was something that happened, I think, yesterday that I was planning on saving for next week. So that might also be a thing. I might
Uh,
just be misremembering it.
yeah, you only sent one thing Thursday.
Okay.
But yeah, the rest
But
is mine.
yeah, anyway, like we said, this was a very light week, probably because the news zeitgeist was trending toward matters political and not worried too much about popular culture for 5 seconds.
Alright.
Granted, so often those two things intersect because the various journalists who are tasked with reporting on pop culture can't help themselves but make shit political. But that's what we're here for when they refuse to stay in their fucking lane.
Oh, and if I'm quiet for a moment or something, I'm eating dinner. I'm having. It's technically homemade chicken pot pie.
Ah.
I mean, it's not made. It's not like a. It's not like it's made in it. We just use like biscuits and stuff. We put it in a bowl. So,
Mhm.
but yeah, it's still good. You know, I got a hey, when you have a family member who is a chef, you use them.
Mhm.
Don't tell him I said that because
Get back in the kitchen, food slave. Lol.
yeah, don't tell him I ever said that because he will punch me in the dick.
Although in fairness, he basically takes whatever excuse he can to do that anyway. So not
God, we really are.
exactly relevant.
Yeah, fair enough. God, we really are brothers. Anyway,
A bit.
again, okay, so this is what Dalton sent this week, just because
Though
I'm
in
not sure.
fairness, if you ever hit me in the dick, I will put curses on you. I am warning you now.
Why would I punch you in the dick? You don't give me a reason to.
Well, I mean, to be fair, what's the tally now on all of the noogies and other assorted beatings that I'm owed from annoying you over the years?
I honestly both never kept track and probably lost track.
I will have to do some channel archaeology and go searching through the older episodes and see how many
Dude,
I
it's
can
probably
count it.
you realize it's probably going to be in the hundreds, right?
Yes, but it is important that things be kept in balance and properly fucking
Cataloged.
recorded and shit. So there.
Fair enough. All right, so yeah, this is what Dalton sent to me. It's from Bounty in the Comics, written by Spencer Bukuli. If I say the name again, I'm terrible with names unless
I
I hear
think we've actually
first.
run into him before, haven't we? I could have sworn we've
I
run into him before.
this was published June 30th today, so Saturday, Friday, Thursday, Wednesday.
Hmm.
All right. Star Wars director Charmin. Again, I am terrible with names, and if I say a name wrong, it's not out of malice or anything. It's more so ignorance of being able to pronounce it.
I believe it's Charmaine Obate Chinoy, if I'm not mistaken.
I am okay. I'm gonna try and say that again. Please be.
He
Please
could
be
fuck
patient
up
with me.
John Smith with scant enough warning, guys.
I probably could. I'm not gonna. I'm not gonna lie. Anyway. Okay. Yeah. Director Charmin Obaid Chinoy says Rey is the key to the franchise's future. At the heart of it, for me, is Rey Skywalker.
Ms. Shinoy, you do realize that you are alone on a very, very vast world with that opinion, right? Like, even people who can tolerate the sequel trilogy, of which there are very few to begin with, but even the people who can tolerate the sequel trilogy have no love lost for Rey. They're at best tolerant of her. And making her the main character of the like proceeding of the next trilogy in the same way that Anakin was of the prequel trilogy or Luke was of the sequel trilogy, or yeah, the original trilogy, um, will probably get you round about the same box office returns as Solo, if not less than that. Which I believe Solo only made like 300 some odd million. And I could easily see a world in which a Rey movie or a Rey trilogy fails to break 100 million each.
I already did.
They haven't made the Rey movies yet. They sort of backdoored her into the sequel trilogy of the Skywalker saga, but those weren't. And this is the heart of the problem. Rey didn't leave enough of an impression on people
Yeah, that's
in the sequel trilogy to justify making her the main character of the next set.
I feel
And what
like there's
impression
kind of a
she did leave
consensus.
was a negative one.
I'm gonna be fully honest. She left no impression with me. Like every other character, was interesting, compelling. Now that and other stuff, and she's an actress, I respect her. Was
I like
so
I like
poorly written.
I like the concept of Rey more than I like what they actually did with her. I was actually before Last Jedi came out, I was betting that the premise of the new trilogy was going to be that neither the light nor dark side should exist in isolation. They both must be balanced. I could have sworn they were going a gray Jedi or dark Jedi route, especially because in the old canon there was an ancient order called the Jedi, who were the precursors to both the Sith and the Jedi, who sought for balance in the Force rather than darkness and light. And the Grey Jedi, therefore, at least in the old canon, were the only ones who had a goddamn clue most of the time. That and some of the Dark Jedis. But, like, I could have sworn that before Last Jedi came out, they were going to go the Force must be in balance rather than in light version, and that I actually called that Rey was a Palpatine before it was revealed that she was a Palpatine. The problem is they didn't do what I thought they were going to do, which is have Kylo Ren have, Ben Solo fall to the dark side, even though he is the spawn of Skywalker, and have Rey Palpatine resist the dark side and remain in the light. But they didn't do that. They basically never had Rey actually be genuinely tempted by the darkness, and therefore there was no heroic virtue in her resistance to it. She basically resisted it out of indifference rather than resisting it out of actual, like, redeeming the sins of the, in this case, grandfather. Because that's the thing. The idea of the sins of the father, or the sins of the previous generation, or the sins of, successive generations, has been a thing in Star Wars, quote unquote, thematically, basically since Minute One. In the prequel movies, it was the imbalance in the Force, and also, if you know the original expanded universe canon, you know that either Sidious or Plagueis used the Force to create Anakin in the womb of me Skywalker, and that's why he was a quote-unquote immaculate conception to begin with. And so in that way, not only was Anakin the sacrificial lamb for all the quote-unquote sins of the entire Force, but also, by virtue of being quasi-spawned of Plagueis and his life creation methods, Anakin was redeeming the sins of his, indirect father by falling to the dark side and then seeing the error of his ways. Luke, obviously, was all about redeeming Vader and seeing the good even in people who had been fallen and broken and damaged and blah.
Okay, so what the point I was going to say was, I don't disagree with what you said. Obviously, I do agree. Like, the concept of Rey is interesting. It was just never like fully expanded upon or developed in a way that got her interesting.
Because she's such a nothing character that there is no good or evil that can be pinged upon her, because she is a character that is almost anathema to either.
Right. But I was also going to pull up the point that every other character throughout the sequel trilogy, like the side characters or the secondary,
was more interesting than Rey. Yeah.
Like, again, the consensus I believe a lot of people have had ever since the trilogy came out, or even like the first,
was that Finn should have been the main character and Rey should have been one of his supporting characters.
Yes.
Which, I mean, does kind of jibe with the original trilogy in a sense, because a lot of people, not me, but a lot of people came away from the original trilogy thinking that Han was more interesting than Luke. Personally, I think they were both boring as shit and that Yoda was the most interesting character in the original trilogy, but I'm weird like that.
Really, I thought it was... Well, I was kind of in between Vader and Chewbacca. Mostly because Chewbacca.
Yeah, but again, we're weird like that. But a lot of people in the fandom came away from the original trilogy thinking that Han was more interesting than Luke. So having either Poe Dameron or Finn or both kind of take a spotlight away from the ostensible main character in the form of Rey would have actually been somewhat in keeping with the ethos of Star Wars in a way.
Mm-hmm. All right, moving on.
Yeah.
All right. In the opinion of soon-to-be franchise director Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy, the character of Rey is the key to the future survival of the entire Star Wars franchise.
I think she's probably going to end up being more key to its death, all things considered, frankly.
Mm-hmm. Moving on?
Yeah.
The director, who is currently attached to helm the heroine's upcoming solo film, offered her take on the subject while speaking to her future entry in A Galaxy Far, Far Away with SiriusXM's Jessica Shaw for the broadcaster's Stars interview series. Pressed by her host for her current feelings towards directing the next major entry, the embattled franchise, Obaid-Chinoy asserted, "Sometimes you walk in the footsteps of people and giants who've created worlds. And in the case of Star Wars, George Lucas's world and the filmmakers who have walked in his footsteps have set this world that they want young viewers to sort of walk into and have an understanding of the world."
Okay, here's a point at which I'm going to be slightly controversial. Because while we all owe George Lucas a debt for essentially creating Star Wars, and he did, and we do, in fairness, he actually originally felt that he owed more of a debt to those people who inspired him. Namely, specifically Joseph Campbell and the Campbellian monomyth and the spaghetti westerns and science fiction serials that he grew up on as a child. Those three things are actually more responsible for the soul of Star Wars: the Campbellian monomyth, the Buck Rogers / Flash Gordon television serials, and the spaghetti westerns of the 60s and 70s. Are more responsible for the soul of Star Wars even than George Lucas, and we know because George Lucas straight up told us so. So, for all of this lionizing of a man, the man of George Lucas, it means absolutely nothing if you go against the things that inspired him. Same thing with Tolkien. You can lionize Tolkien all you want because Tolkien did quite amazing things. But if you're never going to pay any homage to the things he was paying homage to with Lord of the Rings or with the world of Arda, i.e., the world of Middle Earth, etc., then you're always going to be missing a large chunk of the. You're always going to be missing a large chunk of the main soul of the thing. And I think that is a larger and more instructive thing with regards to Star Wars than even deferring to George Lucas. Because George Lucas, as we all know, eventually did grow to be a little bit too far up his own ass and needed people to tell him no. But the things that he did right, he did in homage and deference to pre-existing things. And if you really want to bring back the soul of Star Wars, you need to focus on those things that pre-existed and inspired George Lucas that caused him to make Star Wars in the first place.
Okay, so I guess I do. All right, I'm going on a bit of a tangent here, and it's kind of a little self-aggrandizing. I'm not gonna lie, a little bit. So back in 2019, after the Rise of Skywalker, when we did that whole review, like at New Year's,
We did.
I had spent a bit of time talking about a rewrite I had of the sequel trilogy. While I had only had notes and stuff, like bullet points of certain things throughout it, I had pitched that idea just because I do that because I can't stop myself.
He does it. It literally is a fucking neurodivergent compulsion for him. I literally cannot go 2 days without talking to him. And then he'll come back to me with, okay, so I did a thing. At which point my smirk will grow to the size of the Grinch's from the Jim Carrey version, and I will just go,
Although I will say it's somewhat waning lately, just because I think I've been busy with so many other things.
Which honestly is probably good for your mental health because you were in danger of almost going full Richard Maddock from the Sandman there a couple of times, my friend.
Fair enough. What was I gonna say? For my own personal take of the trilogy, still some sequel from the original sequel trilogy. Mainly I guess how would I put it? Surface level stuff they had done. Well, I had I guess literally kept the same. Was I had everything else. I had written. Granted, at this time, I think I was even right. I started in 2018 and then pitched it at the end of 2019. But I should really write that down again and hammer as was the daughter of Luke Skywalker. I called her Mira Skywalker. She was supposed to be the daughter of. Because otherwise, I wanted to keep a lot of the stuff that was written in the Legends and continuity the same, roughly until like sequel trilogy, which would have been 30 years.
I think we can all agree that it was a fundamental mistake for Disney Star Wars to trash the EU almost in its entirety.
Well, but they also take a lot of it. So it's a weird catch there.
Mm-hmm. Frankly, I'm just glad that Filoni used the Night Sisters before Disney bought Star Wars, so they have to keep the Witch Planet canon. Because I would burn things if they decanonized the Witches of Dathomir.
Idea-wise, it was her whole journey I had written out was again like what you had pitched for Rey or theorized about Rey's journey.
Mm-hmm.
To find a balance between the light and the dark. Either a dark Jedi. Well, I never really figured that part out. To be fair, it was just like she was supposed to, but the journey was at one point and felt in her father's history and her grandfather's history, and X herself. Major threat wise, First Order. I didn't want to do the First Order because it was very much just the Empire.
And wasn't there a sort of airsat continuation of the Empire in the old canon that what was it called? Freaking
I can't remember what it was called.
Is it the Dark Empire novels? No. I
knew Thrawn was in command of it at one point, like in his trilogy of books.
Yeah, but I don't remember. I don't remember what it's called.
Was it the Remnant? The Remnants?
The Imperial Remnant. It may have been. I don't.
That sounds like it, but anyway.
But yeah, it sounds vaguely familiar. I just can't remember what specific book or like piece of EU media that it came from. But my point is that once again, if they were just gonna redo stuff from the EU but worse, why didn't you just keep the EU as a basis?
Right, but anyway. idea wise, again, the character. For one thing, she was a really interesting character. I tried to do my absolute best to make her like super interesting. I gave her just because it's me, and if anyone knows me for as long as Dawn has, they know I like one of my favorite parts of Star Wars universe is the Mandalorians.
Mm-hmm.
So I gave her a lover. I gave her a Mandalorian lover, a boyfriend, or whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
And he would have, idea-wise, he would have. Okay, it doesn't matter. I don't want to get into like too much of a tangent here, but yeah, her whole arc, is similar to what Dawn had pitched for Rey's arc of like finding that balance between the light and the dark, dark sides of the forces. But also kind of overcoming kind of the guilt and shame she has of the complicated legacy of her family. I just remember like the threat, like the antagonistic force I have created. I am actually super proud of, and it would be super interesting to see in a Star Wars thing.
Mm.
I remember this vividly. I remember it vividly because it was just so unique. Like it would have been so unique coming out at the time it did with the sequel trilogy. I called it the Red Salvation.
Mm.
It was effectively like a Spanish Inquisition across the stars going against Force users. Like hunting them down. Hold on. I want to finish the idea.
Mm-hmm.
they well they were meant to represent the common people that were constantly caught in the conflicts of the dark side and the light side, the Force users, like the Jedi, the Sith, yada yada. Because given the history of the Star Wars universe, people who use the Force often cause endless wars and conflicts and stuff. And the Red Salvation was formed as a means to end that threat before it has a chance to continue that cycle.
They kind of did something similar with the Yuzong Vong in the EU, though quite frankly, I fucking hate the Yuzong Vong and I want to genocide every last motherfucking one of them.
And
because their existence makes no sense.
Sorry, I'm also remembering. I can't remember what I called this guy, but he was supposed to be kind of like the Kylo Ren, Darth Vader kind of character, like one of the grand leaders of the Red Salvation. A super fanatical dude, wanted to destroy is considered the guy, because I wanted, full honesty, I did not want to use like the main cast characters, like the original trilogy characters, and have them. I know this would be controversial, but they would have technically been either killed off screen or just are not around to be of aid to the main characters, because it's a new chapter and all that.
Yeah, I can see why that's a thing in your version, but I will say that both the actual sequel trilogy that we got and your version, the mistake being made is a failure to effectively pass the torch.
That's fair. But idea-wise, the main character, the main main antagonist of the whole story, the whole trilogy, was this grand leader, like one of the grand leaders of the Red Salvation, total fanatic, was considered like this is going to be a big thing, obviously, between him and the main character, like the daughter of Luke Skywalker. He is known as the man who killed Luke Skywalker. Obviously, so that obviously creates personal connection between her and the antagonist, right?
Yeah.
But it's soon found out that he himself is also a Force sensitive. Thus, he gets exiled from the Red Salvation and deemed a target by them as well.
I don't know if you, I don't know if you ever I don't know if you ever dealt with this in your concept, but the irony, of course, is that for as long as there are living beings, there will be Force sensitives, because the Force is effectively it's similar to like the concept of ether or the concept of Akasha in like Eastern spirituality or early modern quasi science, in that as long as there is a living being, there will be the Force, because the Force is both what like creates and fertilizes living beings, but also is sustained by their existence. So honestly, for this Red Salvation of yours to really work, and it would be an interesting idea to have them confront this, they would basically have to genocide all life in order to get rid of the Force, because the Force is a life force.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But yeah, ultimately the dude. Because here's the thing, I also thought of like the ending for the ending battle for like the third movie, and I was actually really proud of this one. But it ends where the original trilogy began. What's Luke's world again? I can't remember.
Tatooine.
Yeah. It ends there. Like the final battle and everything. Daughter of Luke Skywalker facing off against the man who killed Luke Skywalker, and also the idea is that he was also carrying Luke's lightsaber, like the green, the one he forged in Return of the Jedi.
Ah, the green one.
Yeah.
Not the blue one he lost on Bespin that he got from Obi-Wan. Yeah.
I just thought that was like a nice little ending poetic that for the Skywalker saga of those 3 trilogies, it all comes down to a fight on Tatooine.
It is interesting as long as you keep off of Tatooine in almost every other instance,
Oh
because
yeah, no. That was the whole plan.
because the overuse of Tatooine has been a blight on the
Like
sequel
legitimately, it was
canon.
only going to be the 3rd movie in my sequel trilogy that Tatooine shows up.
Mm-hmm. But also, thank you very much for remembering that the green one exists, because another stupid thing that the sequel trilogy did was they had Rey give Luke the blue one back. And apart from the stupidity of having him just toss it away like nothing, which is stupid, it bothers me that no one remembered that the green one exists.
Right.
Like, I get the symbolic importance and shite, but like, yes, he lost his blue lightsaber on Cloud City and everything, and that's tragic and everything. But he went and made his own goddamn one, and it was green to signify that he was a Jedi counselor, or prior to all that shit being canonized in the EU, at least a a synonym of being a Jedi master and so on. And nobody remembered the green one exists, and it bothers me.
Well, it was, I think the man who killed him keeping it as a trophy and even wielding it in battle, like perverting what it's meant to be as a
Yeah.
tool of peace and using it as a
No,
weapon of
no, it
war.
works. I'm just glad to see it, because apparently I am one of the only remaining fuckers who remembers that the green one exists and that the blue one doesn't necessarily have to be like this like sacred symbolic thing, in the sense that he made his own goddamn lightsaber and he should still be wielding it.
I was
But oh
also
well.
very proud of the lightsaber I had given the daughter of Luke Skywalker. I remember that too. Like it was double-bladed purple lightsaber.
Interesting. I do like the purple. Yes, they came up with it just so that Samuel L. Jackson could have a purple one, but goddamn it, they actually came up with a canonical and lore-based reason why he should have a purple one, in that he is capable of using the dark while staying in the light, which
Yeah.
frankly is something that all Jedi should in some sense be striving for, because again, in the original old universe canon, that was the original state of force using in the galaxy before the Jedi and the Sith had their splinter group nonsense happen, and the next several thousand years being what it became. But like,
I also like the
I
double-bladed.
continue to maintain that the Grey Jedi and some of the Dark Jedi are the only people adjacent to either order that actually know what the fuck is going on with the Force.
But I also liked giving her the double-bladed lightsaber because normally how we've seen it used is by various Sith. Okay, hold on. General Krell used a double. I think there were some Jedi who did use the double-bladed one, but
yeah, but it's very rare, and at least in the movies, we've only ever seen Sith use the double-bladed ones.
right.
So I agree with you. It would be interesting to have a Jedi actually have one, even if they were a Grey Jedi, which seems to be the route you're going. Which again, the Grey Jedi are the only ones within the orders who know what the fuck is going on with
I
the
also had
Force. So good for them.
like the second movie, which was supposed to be obviously a parallel to like Empire Strikes Back and stuff. I mean, granted, her journey obviously would have mirrored her father's in the original trilogy. I'm sorry, I know we gotta read this, and we do all kind of a timetable, but I'm just remembering like a lot of the details now. But the journey she had in the second movie, again, obviously paralleling to her father's journey in Empire Strikes Back. For one thing, she goes on like a force journey, like spirit journey kind of deal. Traveling to various locations that relate to her family bloodline, and their history, facing various challenges and stuff, and all that, right? One idea I had was that she would have appeared on Mortis.
Speaking of things in the expanded universe canon that they need to make more use of.
And kind of do what her grandfather did in the Clone Wars trilogy episodes that they did from. Was it trilogy of Mortis or was it 2 episodes?
No, I think there was a Mortis trilogy. I know there was a Mortis trilogy originally, and there was a Night Sister trilogy, and then there was a Darth Maul trilogy where he was with his brother Savage.
And she would have.
That technically kind of makes it 6 episodes focused on the Night Sisters. Not that I, of all people, am complaining, but
Right.
anyway.
Where she would have been in the same arena that Anakin was in when he created the twilight between day and light.
Right, when he did the like Force Commander voice.
Yeah. And she would have faced her shadow self, like the embodiment of her dark side, which she had tapped with.
Similar to Yoda when he figured out how to Force Ghost.
Yes.
Which again, as much as I admire a lot of the people that complain about how Star Wars has been misused by the Disney Wars era, there is a troubling amount of people in the Star Wars fandom who genuinely think that the story of Star Wars is a story of good versus evil. And it's not. It's a story of balance between light and dark, goddammit, and how the imbalances between light and dark completely permafuck everything.
Yeah, the whole idea, like visually, would have been, daughter, the actual daughter would have represented the light side, and the dark shadow version would have been representing the dark side, and as they fought, night and day would move back and depending on who was winning in the fight.
Yeah, like it did in that one scene in the Clone Wars show.
Even like there was this other scene where it's like she's traveling through a tunnel using her lightsaber as a light, right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to like it's but yeah, it's like a pitch black tunnel and she's only illuminated by a purple glow of her lightsaber, and then suddenly you hear the breathing.
So similar to the cave thing on Dagobah. The
similar,
dark side,
but it's like pitch blackness, but it's absolute pitch blackness, except the lightsabers. And she fights smart by turning off her lightsaber and disappearing into the dark, and only igniting it to attack. That checking Darth, like fighting Darth Vader instead, and the whole line was to, well, idea-wise, the ending of it, I can't remember what I was from that book. Like I said, I came up with this like 2024, 2018, 5 years ago? 6 years ago. Thank you. So my mind's a little foggy.
But in any case, we do really, really have to get back on point. Otherwise, we're never going to get done with this.
But final thing was another parallel to her father in terms of the test forced her. Is that, you know how Luke skipped his training to go save his friends? Because he had the vision that they were in danger? She wouldn't. She would continue her training because she would have faith in her friends to be able to save themselves without
redeeming the sins of the father, so to speak.
Yeah. That one I'm actually very proud of.
Anyway,
Yeah,
back
sorry.
on point.
Again,
Because
I'm sorry.
because we have
It's
to, or we will be here for 4 hours.
I know. I really got to write that stuff down again and like publish it
Yes, you
somewhere.
do. Much like the Legend of Korra rewrite we did, that really needs to be redone at some point because I think you lost the files.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, when was the last time we worked on it? Like it was before COVID. I know that. So
Yeah, I think it might have even been before the Lionhearted got rolling.
yeah, that was 5 or so years ago.
Yeah, must be.
All right.
But
Anyway,
yeah, we came up with a really badass take on a redux of Legend of Korra that fixes a lot of the problems and actually deepens the mythology in some really interesting ways.
problem was
Um,
the problem behind it was we had to watch the first season of Korra.
and literally, like, we ended up having to stop at like every 5 minutes because the show did something wrong in the first season of Legend of Korra.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Weirdly enough, I think we both agreed. Like the worst part about the season, like the first season, because originally it was meant to be a mini series, which the quick pacing, which was what we continually talked about.
Yeah, they never let things sit. Like, they never let long-term consequences be a thing, and they never gave the characters a life outside of the plot, which is the one thing that original series Avatar has over Legend of Korra 1,000-fold,
Right.
is
Okay.
because the
Sorry.
characters
God.
are
Fuck.
three-dimensional. But yeah, we can't get off into that. Even though I would really like to talk about the whole Dark Lion Turtle creating the Avatar thing and everything, but
We'll get. Well, we will. Dude, we are so getting back. Fuck. We have so much shit to do. Fuck.
we do. Yes,
All right.
back on
Anyway.
point.
Yeah.
God damn it.
Okay. All right. And at the heart of it for me is Rey Skywalker. Is this? Hold on. Let me go back a little bit just so we have the context of what I was reading.
Yeah.
Pressed by her host for her current feelings towards directing the next major entry, the embattled franchise, uh, I feel like there's a grammar error there, I think. But either way, Abai Chinoy asserted, sometimes you walk in the footsteps of people and giants who've created worlds, and in the case of Star Wars, George Lucas's world, and the filmmakers who have walked in his footsteps have set this world that they want young viewers to sort of walk into and have an understanding of the world. And at the heart of it, for me, is Rey Skywalker, is Daisy Ridley and her story, and taking her on an adventure to a Jedi Academy, she continued, and sort of creating a world that is a natural dovetail to the story that we've seen her go through in the last three episodes. And working with Lucasfilm and Kathleen Kennedy and the team over there in breathing life into characters that everyone loves and has fallen in love with, and finding new characters that the next generation of moviegoers will fall in love with.
Okay, here's the problem. In the EU canon, establishing a new Jedi Order and a new Jedi Academy was very much Luke's arc. You hijacked and retarded Luke's arc in order to give half of Luke's arc to Rey and give the other half of Luke's arc a complete inversion by having him go through some kind of midlife crisis depression nonsense. And all the while not giving Rey an individual character or individual personality or any like in-universe reason to give a fuck about her beyond the fact that she is the main character. And herein lies the problem with giving her a solo movie of any kind. She does not have a personhood enough to give a fuck about, and any aspect of her that is individuated from the legacy that she is hijacking is usually something that will piss off or annoy most of the fan base. And therein lies the problem, because those are basically your only two options with Rey. You can either be utterly indifferent to her in a soulless, annoying, boring way, or you can be annoyed at her for all the shit she breaks within the canon and in the sort of underlying ethos of the franchise. And when your character's only options are boring or annoying to the point of rage, you done fucked up somewhere.
Again, I do kind of
Moving
want
on.
to point out. I mean, this
Go
is
ahead.
just a simple question, and not trying to stroke my own ego, because, well, if anyone who knows me for long enough knows I have the exact opposite of an ego.
He occasionally has to be beaten the fuck out of to stop depreciating himself. And I say
But
that as the person who more often than not has to be the person metaphorically beating the fuck out of him to make him stop appreciating himself.
but I would like to say, given the, I know I went over like a lot of points in the arc of the daughter of Luke Skywalker character I talked about earlier, but comparing her to Rey, again, even with just the bullet points I had given, I kind of want to say my character works a little better.
She is at least a character. Granted, my bias will always be that they shouldn't have decanonized the EU to begin with, and they should have just done like Mara Jade or somebody if they wanted a female Skywalker character to lead the next generation or whatever. But like, yeah, at least your character is a character who has a like life to her. Granted, again, I will always prefer that they left the EU alone and just did adaptations of the EU. Why the fuck they didn't, I will
I
never
mean,
understand. But
to be fair, my idea, if I was in charge of the whole thing, would have been most of the stuff that happens post original trilogy in the EU happens between like the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy. Granted, there would have to be some changes given the new characters I am introducing in the sequel trilogy, but more or less Thrawn's thing and all that stuff that happens.
honestly, if it were up to me, I wouldn't even fuck around with new characters in the sequel trilogy. I would have just done Luke versus Aboleth as a sequel trilogy.
That's fair. Anyway, shall we?
Yeah, moving
Okay.
on.
To this end, the director then revealed that throughout the film's creative process, she has regularly been in touch with a who's who of Star Wars creative alumni, some good, some the worst. I've had conversations with J.J. Abrams. I've had conversations with George Lucas, and then of course Dave Filoni, who's a big part of the Star Wars universe now, revealed about Chinoy. We speak very often, and Kathy Kennedy and Carrie Beck and Simon Emanuel. Sorry. I mean, I think the team is really taking time to make sure that we do justice to telling the story of Rey, and I think that she stands for something. We've seen this wonderful journey that she went on in episode 7, 8, and 9, and now it's like on to the next adventure and how to recreate a world and the adventure that we take her on.
Okay, but here's the thing. You're talking about Rey's story and Rey's standing for something and Rey's character and Rey's this and Rey's that. But the thing is, the whole like point of her journey, as per Rian Johnson's apparent mandate, is that she didn't go on a journey, that she didn't have to improve, that she didn't have to deal with anything like legacy or bloodlines or any of that shit. And insofar as she did, she basically just won by being indifferent to any of it. This is the problem. She is a like desert of a character. She has no like do me a favor and point out to me some of Rey's likes or dislikes. What are Rey's hobbies? What are Rey's interests? What are Rey's fucking favorite foods or like pastimes or whatever the fuck? I can answer those questions with regards to a lot of the original trilogy characters, the prequel trilogy characters, and quite a lot of the extended universe characters. What does Rey do when the plot isn't moving her? This is a question because the best thing I could say is vague mechanic shit. Is the most elaborate answer I can give to that question. And beyond vague mechanic shit, and the fact that she's the descendant of a clone of Chief Palpatine, which almost bears no relevance to her as a person at all, even though it probably should. There is nothing on which to base a ideal for Rey or a story for Rey, because this is the problem with Rian Johnson. I genuinely believe that a lot of these problems wouldn't have occurred if you had just left JJ in charge of the entire sequel trilogy. Granted, JJ is kind of a like JJ's biggest problem is he can only ever do things to the bare minimum. He can never add anything particularly good to things. He can only ever do the barest most minimum. But the thing is, a bare minimum would have been better and more well handled than what Rian Johnson did, which was literally, I don't like Star Wars. I want to turn Star Wars on its head because a lot of the key features of Star Wars annoy me. That was Rian Johnson's basically whole ethos. And as a result, that's what he did to Last Jedi. And because Last Jedi took place between the two JJ films, anything that JJ was setting up to be in some way continuous with the original trilogy or with the prequels got nuked in between point A and point C. So he ended up having to shove his point B and his point C into the third movie because Rian Johnson set off depth charges in the middle of the continuity. But back on point, because Rian Johnson did that, the whole ethos of Rey is I don't have to go on an arc. I don't have to go on a hero's journey. I don't have to learn things or redeem things or gain things or develop skills because I am literally an anti-narrative device. That's her whole character. And it's been her whole character this entire time, barring things that JJ set up in the first movie that went nowhere because Rian Johnson nuked it. So, yeah, because Rey was such a blank slate character, and a blank slate character can work if you have a good enough story to put them in. But because Rey was such a blank slate character, and then Rian Johnson was allowed to set off debt charges in the middle of J.J. Abrams' trilogy, even the probably pretty serviceable story that J.J. was setting up with her didn't end up getting resolved because somebody set off an anti-Star Wars bomb in the middle of a Star Wars trilogy on purpose.
Again, not to bring this up, but okay, you know what? No, because it is relevant. Mira, that was her name. That's what I called her, Mira Skywalker.
Mm-hmm.
I think she fully realized character. Anything I'd written about her. There are elements I think you could make an argument that she is a Mary Sue in a way.
That in and of itself, though, isn't necessarily a problem. There are characters who are hyper competent or hyper capable in lots of stories.
So, so the ideas were they made sense given like her parentage and stuff. Like she's an expert pilot because her dad and grandfather. So that's kind of natural.
It's one of the Gary Stu skills that sort of is genetically grandfathered into the Skywalker bloodline.
Well, there's also the thing of her dad could have just taught well, like as a kid.
I mean that's also true. But whether you choose to say some kind of whether you choose to say some kind of genetic inheritance or you choose to say genetic inheritance tied with training, there's actual reasoning for her to be good at piloting.
Yeah. But she's also very powerful in the Force. I mean, granted, again, I made it that she was the daughter of Luke Skywalker and Mara Jade.
Mm-hmm.
But she's also a very self-loathing character. She's very self-isolating. She's she has a big heart, but she's always scared because she's literally because idea-wise, I had her that but prior to the destruction of the new Jedi Order by the Red Salvation,
Mm-hmm.
um, she had left the Jedi Order out of shame because she used the dark side in a training fight,
Ah,
and out of fear and feeling offended her father. Because again,
essentially, she self-censors to the point of self-sabotage.
yeah. Um, honestly, I was literally considering like first movie for most of it. There are hints that she's a Jedi or Force sensitive, but she doesn't use it. Doesn't use the Force. She refuses
Mm-hmm.
because
She
she's
abstains from
scared.
it, basically.
Yeah. And again, it's that whole like I feel like it's a very complicated arc because technically when you first like kind of in the middle of her hero's journey.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I would say it's still pretty early on in her hero's journey when you first meet her in the first movie.
Mm-hmm.
Probably the refusal of the call, I think it is.
Yeah. And granted, there are other story templates you could go with, but
No, yeah, but
unfortunately, not really in Star Wars because George Lucas literally conceived of Star Wars as a proof of concept for the Joseph Campbell theory of storytelling. Also, as George Lucas is famous for saying, it's like poetry, it rhymes, which I've always interpreted and put in more precise language by him saying that essentially time or the force or reality is cyclical in the Star Wars universe, i.e. the same beats will keep repeating because that's sort of the language that reality understands in the Star Wars universe, so to speak.
actually, funny enough, I can quote Alan Wake on this.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a circle, but a spiral.
Yeah.
Uh, Kind of the idea of that is meaning that it will wind up in a similar place, but element and how you got there are slightly different.
Yeah. Which again works for Star Wars as both a proof of concept for Joseph Campbell's monomyth, but also fits in that time being a cyclical thing. Which again, I say time is cyclical rather than it's like poetry it rhymes because I know what George Lucas was getting at, but he said it in a kind of stupid way. And also, we know that Eastern philosophy or Eastern mysticism was a huge influence in the world building of Star Wars as well as Joseph Campbell and sci-fi serials and spaghetti westerns. So
Also, sorry.
knowing as we do that Eastern like quasi Buddhist or quasi Taoist philosophy is at least in was in George Lucas's mind when he was conceiving of Star Wars, we can effectively say that history or time has a cyclical component to it in Star Wars
Right.
to some degree anyway.
All right.
At least the stuff that's influenced by the Force. Yeah.
Final thing I remembered that I'm going to mention. I remembered from my rewrite sequel trilogy. It was just a fun idea that would have been interesting if they wanted to come with all their things instead of doing fucky wucky with the Star Wars property.
Yeah.
But you know how in the Mandalorian, Din Djarin and he gets a clan, Clan Djarin and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the Mandalorian boyfriend of Mira Skywalker would have been my idea would have been that it was a foundling of the Clan Djarin, that he was a foundling of the Clan Djarin, and would have become the next Mandalore.
Mm-hmm. Because you gotta stick your found family motifs in there somewhere, don't you?
Well, that, and I think it's also interesting that we would see the rise of this clan through the series.
Right. I know. I'm busting your balls because as someone who is frequently your sounding board for so many IPs and so many ideas, I have noticed that you like reusing similar ideas a lot. And one of the ideas that seems to be repeating in your head as a constant loop is the found family motif.
To be fair, that's an actual thing, and I thought it would have made. I think it would have been more interesting that. Well, for one thing, it's a clan founded by a foundling. So,
Which speaking of a better use of this in Star Wars, if they really wanted to, they could have played that angle or something like it for the new kids in the sequel trilogy. They could have played up the like found family connections between Rey, Finn, and Poe, and it would have worked. But they didn't because they're stupid.
right.
And in the case of Rian Johnson, he is literally anti-narrative in most cases, or at least anti-narrative in the like quasi Joseph Campbell sense that George Lucas founded Star Wars on.
Also, I just realized this that I think subconsciously because I remember the story of the dark saber that
Hmm.
is forged by a Mandalorian Jedi, which is cool
Yeah.
in of itself, and thus created a huge rivalry and kind of blood
Hmm.
feud with the Mandalorians and Jedi.
Speaking of untapped potential for
Right.
theories that they never used.
Hold on. The thing I was thinking of, because I have that, it's it's Mira Skywalker and her Mandalorian boyfriend, possibly husband, if we want to go towards the end of the series of that.
Her her boy toy in shining armor. Lol.
Shut up. Um, the fact that he becomes a Mandalore,
Hmm.
leader of all the Mandalorians and stuff. I
Yeah.
probably call him Mandalore the Courageous or Mandalore the Noble or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, but his union with the daughter of Luke Skywalker, and she possibly would have become the next Grand Jedi Master or something. Um,
Hmm.
well,
I
it probably
assume
wouldn't
you
be
mean the Grandmaster, but yeah.
Grand. Thank you. While it probably wouldn't be touched upon, it would at least be interesting that technically signifies the end of a blood feud that's been like thousands of years in the making of the Mandalorians and the Jedi.
Again, redeeming the sins of the repeating sins that travel throughout the generations and shit.
Yeah. God, now I want to watch this trilogy. I wish this had been the thing.
Yeah, and as with so many things, unfortunately, we're not the people in control of our IPs.
Right?
The people in
But
control of our IPs
yeah.
frequently hate us.
But if they wanted to build up a continuity between the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy, which they were kind of doing in some of the shows that were set
Hmm.
between the two, between the original and the sequel trilogy,
Yeah.
with the Mandalorian, you could have seen the rise of that clan, and you would know its end point being that they would become the leaders of that. One of them would become a leader of the Mandalorian people.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. Anyway, we
yeah,
really have to
I'm
get this
sorry.
to
It's
some
just like
kind of conclusion.
just all these ideas are coming back to me now, and I really want to write them down.
I know. Freaking Richard Maddox syndrome.
All right. Well, to be fair, I've had these ideas for years. It's not like a sudden burst of inspiration.
Hmm.
Okay. At current, the only officially confirmed detail regarding the upcoming Rey Solo film, outside of both Obey Chinoy and Ridley's attachment, is that its plot will purposely focus on the heroine's attempt to build a new Jedi Order.
Which was Luke's job until you gave him depression and made him turn into the Big Lebowski all of a sudden.
Funny enough, I think I did use Duel of the Fates, like was supposed to be the original title for episode 9,
Hmm.
as my title for my episode 9.
Hmm.
one thing, I think it works a lot more with the ideas I've had.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Not to mention it's a reference to one of the greatest songs in all of Star Wars, and that is saying something because John Williams does not slouch with regards to Star Wars music.
God, I would love to hear him actually. I would have loved to hear him, like, again, we would have focused, we would have had a B plot line in the Empire Strikes Back story. The second movie of the sequel trilogy would have been on Mandalore. I would have loved to hear him score Mandalore and stuff like that.
That being said, I thought that the theme they gave Mandalore in the Clone Wars was actually pretty badass, especially when Darth Maul was dueling for the Darksaber.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Sure, that wasn't just his theme, like Darth Maul's theme, not Mandalore.
I thought they gave the Mandalore fight scene its own vibe. I thought.
I could be wrong. It's been a while. So anyway, however, per Obey Chinoy's own words, it appears the film will also be used as a vehicle for a very female-specific story. Of course it will. Why are we surprised? Why are we surprised or disappointed? We knew this was probably going to be a thing.
I know, but it's the frustration of watching them make the same mistake over and over and over again.
Definition of insanity.
Yeah. The frustration of watching people who apparently have like dictatorial fiat over our favorite IPs go literally insane in public. But okay, Ms. Shinoy, I can't believe I'm having to explain this shit again. The thing of it is, Star Wars is at its best when it is universal and timeless. You know what is anathema to both being universal and being timeless? Being hyper-fixated on the political definition of an identity. That will nuke any potential for universality or indeed timelessness. If you make it A, fixated on the current moment, and B, fixated on a very narrow political definition of an identity group and a demographic, you will probably suck all of the likability, relatability, or intrigue out of the idea. And a story without likability, relatability, or intrigue is completely borked from conception to grave.
Oh shit!
Especially when you consider that was kind of Rey's whole shtick in the sequel trilogy as well, and it made her extremely unlikable. Not to mention vacant and, like, again, the desert of a character.
Sorry. Nothing just came up to me when I just realized it. The relationship between Mira and her I can't remember the Mandalorian's name. I gave him a name, but I can't remember. But they're already in an established relationship by the time we would meet them in the first movie, which is something completely new and different in Star Wars. At the time it would have been released, 2016 or 2015. Force Awakens came out.
I want to say 2015.
Okay. But yeah, because normally you either see relationships that have happened, like with Obi-Wan and Satine,
or you see relationships in the process of happening, like with Han and Leia.
Yeah. It's usually developing relationships, even like in the EU as well. Like with Mara.
Well, unfortunately, that's a trend in like all of Western literature at this point. People are so fixated with the happening of relationship that they almost never can stick the landing of what happens when they're together. God damn it!
Right, but yeah, that would have been just something different and new at the time comparatively. I mean, granted, it would still be new now just because everyone wants to stick with the same shit. But
yeah, I mean, if you wanted to even do a darker version of this, there was a time, again in the original canon, which I think is still partially canon, kind of, where there was a relationship between Darth Sidious and Mother Talzin during the like prequel timeline. Before Mother Talzin gave birth to Darth Maul, and Sidious realized that he was better apprentice material than she was. But that potential for a budding relationship that ends in betrayal, and then him stealing her son from her. Not to mention stealing the ability for her to even name her son, because this is one of the tricky aspects of this plot line in the, I think, EU, but I think it might still partially at least be canon. Darth Maul was actually born with yellow Sith eyes. And so Sidious took him while he was still a baby. So Darth Maul, unlike Anakin or Dooku, has no other name than his Sith name, because Sidious literally did not let him have one. And she never got to name her own goddamn son.
That's really fucked.
Yeah, and this would be tremendous dramatic pathos you could mine from this shit if they gave a shit about characters for more than 5 seconds.
Anyway, sorry. God damn it. I'm sorry. I don't mean to go on these tangents, but just it's coming out like a flood of ideas now. Like just remembering all the ideas I had, and
he can't help it, folks. And this is when an idea is old in his head. Contemplate for a second for me how incomprehensible this is when he has a new set of ideas that he's trying to work out. Because I have seen it many times at this point, and it is something that you almost have to sit back and watch some of the time. Usually while I'm smirking because I can't help it, but that's neither here nor there.
All right, hopefully tomorrow or something after I'm done with work, I can write this shit down.
Yeah. But anyway, moving on.
Yeah, sorry. Okay. Speaking with CNN's Christy Lou Stout for the network's 2023 New York Eve's broadcast, the director beamed to the show's host. I'm very thrilled about the project because I think that we are about to create something very special. And we're in 2024 now, and I think it's about time that we had a woman come forward to shape the story in a galaxy far, far away.
Oh, for fuck's sake. Leia exists. Mother Talzin exists. Sabine exists. Ahsoka Tano exists. Freaking the Jedi librarian, Jocasta Nu exists.
Bo-Katan. She was a Death Watch Mandalorian, secondhand to previous level.
What is the name of Gina Carano's character?
Cara Dune.
Cara Dune, thank you.
Which, I'm sorry, I sorry, just remembered, you know how, okay, remember Kanan Jarrus from Star Wars Rebels?
Yes.
One of the best new characters from Disney, let's be fully honest on that.
Yeah.
His actual name, because he went by an alias, to hide, right? From the, Empire and stuff. His real name, his Jedi name, is Caleb Dune.
Yeah.
Why they never connected that, I will never know.
Chrono points out in the comics, or in the comments, Mara Jade. But yes, there have been female characters shaping the shit out of Star Wars for ages, and that's not even counting some of the awesome shit in the EU, like Aboleth, the literal mother of the Ones of Mortis, the Eldridge Lovecraftian villainess who Luke fights in his EU timeline, which is so much fucking more interesting than this. But yeah, there have been females shaping the entire Star Wars ethos for years, and there probably always will be. Moreover, Rey was introduced as ostensibly the main character of the sequel trilogy in, again, I want to say 2015, but it might have been 2016. So even even if you meant it in the like feminist sense of like being an ideologically female character, Rey already had her trilogy where she was the main character. She just wasn't exclusively the only character that was the main character.
Mhm.
And that's not even pointing out again, Leia was one of the most active people in the original trilogy. Like, what is the line that everyone remembers her for? Somebody has to save our skins, and neither of you is doing it. Shoots Bent. And yet somehow that doesn't qualify as shaping the Star Wars canon. Hell, the death of Shmi Skywalker is what
Drag.
incentivized Anakin to slaughter the Sand People and shit. So again, women apparently not shaping the Star Wars universe. How exactly?
Mhm. And it's because of his fear of losing Padme, he even goes down the path he does and
Yeah.
becomes Darth Vader.
So yeah, loses his mother, slaughters the Sand People, loses Padme, becomes Darth Vader, and yet this doesn't count as women shaping the Star Wars universe at all.
Anyway, shall we continue?
Yeah.
All right. Further, in a separate interview given to Variety in June 2024, Obey Chinoy affirmed the story that interests me most is in Rey's journey as a female Jedi. That's how I can best bring my experiences to it.
There have been thousands in the Old Republic timeline, in the ancient timeline of the galaxy, in the EU, in the actual time period of the fucking Clone Wars. There have been thousands of female Jedi. There is nothing uniquely like there is no need for a quote unquote politically or demographically female character because surprise freaking surprise, back when we considered the merits of individual characters to be important and not just using them as political or moral mouthpieces for entire demographics, there was a diversity of different female viewpoints. And that's again not even counting the entire planet's worth of witches, who were all like female and rather matriarchal and feministy, even in that sense. The entire fucking planet where the primary force users on that planet were female because they simply would not let the men do it. But apparently that doesn't count, even though Mother Talzin is one of the few characters in the same power category as Sidious and Yoda during the Clone Wars era. Like, she was at one point in the Clone Wars, she was literally one ritual away from being powerful enough to slaughter Sidious out of hand on a whim. But apparently she's not a good enough female representative, despite being the high priestess, ultimately powerful witch of an entire coven of female force users on a planet full of fucking witches. Anyway, moving on.
Mm. As of writing, the Rey Solo film has yet to receive an official release date.
It's going like I'm the only question in my head right now is it going to be financially worse off than Solo, or is it only going to be as bad off as Solo financially? Because I could see it tying with Solo and making 300 some odd million, or I could see it making like half of what the Solo movie made and winding up somewhere in the like low to mid 100 millions. And hell, I could even see it going full the Marvels and failing to even make 100 million domestically, if we're being entirely honest with ourselves here. Anyway,
Yeah,
next thing.
yeah. Give me 1 sec. Okay. Yeah, so from now on, it is stuff I have sent in.
Hmm.
It's weird. Usually, Don is the one who overtakes the podcast with stuff, and I'm just the one who gets like.
I could have sent another article, but it came out like literally yesterday, and I was thinking that I probably should save it for next week because in
No,
my
that's
head I
fair.
was thinking that we already had a full week's worth of stuff.
I mean, yeah, we kind of do. So, yeah.
Hmm.
All right. So this is Deadpool and Wolverine Old Bubs trailer. I guess it's only a minute long, so
Was probably a TV spot then, but in any case, chimichangas.
chimichangas.
I'm about to lose everything that I've ever cared about, and I have no idea how to save it. But you do.
Trust me, kid, I'm no hero.
This Wolverine let down his entire world.
Well, my entire world needs you. Shake on it. Ah! Nicked it. Just got the tip with your little steak knife.
I feel like they really nailed the uh, Wolverine and Deadpool dynamic.
Yeah, the vibe. Yeah, it's definitely.
Yeah, they just because from what I remember of the comics, what I've heard of, what I've gotten from basically us pop culture osmosis of them, so they really hate each other.
Well, it's the usual when you stick a goofball character together with a straight man character, especially a very gruff, very macho straight man character. Because something vaguely similar happens whenever Tony Stark and Doctor Strange get together. This is why I hate people insisting on the facial hair bros meme, because people forget that the initial like basis for the facial hair bros meme was Tony trying to be a goofball and Steven trying to keep things serious and on topic and on point, and Tony not letting Steven be the adult in the room.
I think that's also why Spider-Man hates, like in comics wise, Spider-Man hates Tony too.
Because Spidey is the wisecracker and Tony tries to keep things on task.
Oh no, I thought just because like he thought Tony was an asshole, which I mean kind of is sometimes in comics at least.
Well, I mean, yes, Tony is an asshole, and some people get annoyed at him for those reasons. But as a general rule, if you stick a wisecrack character with a person who isn't a wisecracker, the person who isn't a wisecracker is going to get annoyed at the wisecracker.
Yeah, fair enough. Anyway, it all looks really good too. Like again, the color really pops.
It doesn't surprise me because this is the same director who gave us Free Guy, and apparently he and Ryan Reynolds got along so well that Ryan Reynolds insisted that he take on Deadpool 3 when the two previous people behind the Deadpool movies couldn't do it again or didn't want to do it again. Ryan Reynolds essentially volunteered by force the guy who did Free Guy with him.
All right, shall we?
Mm-hmm. Jimmy Chungus.
What I'm talking about. Big slow motion action sequence. Who knows if you live or die?
Who's next?
Oh my God.
Sabretooth, ready to die.
Wait! Time!
You look ridiculous. People have waited decades for this.
My only real like problem or question or query with this movie so far is I hope to God Wolverine puts on the mask at some point. Please. And not for like 5-second cameo bullshit. Like, no, put on the mask and keep the mask on for at least a fight sequence, please.
Also, and again, this nothing against the original actor for Sabretooth in the X-Men movie, but I saw a video from this YouTuber known as Full Fat Videos who does like really interesting video essays regarding like X-Men movies and stuff and other things like that. Cool dude. I'd recommend him. He's a little long-winded at times, but not bad. Um,
I
he,
mean,
he
you're used to long-winded at this point, hanging around with me so much, but I'm Ching.
yeah, but I know you personally, and I find you. I'm at least able to discuss with you when you do long-winded stuff. Watching a video is different. So,
Mhm.
but
I really like a guy by the name of Little Platoon, and he has very, very long videos. But I tend to prefer long form analytical content, especially when it's funny.
well,
And Little
obviously,
Platoon manages to be funny.
obviously, when I mean long-winded, is that it's dragging on the point instead of like being concise with it.
Hmm.
Which is kind of the problem for me. But what I was gonna say was he done a video relatively recently. I think it was like a month or so ago. Talking about like because Lady Deathstrike looks like from the X2 and stuff. Like they're bringing back characters from the old continuity that might have been variants of those guys that might be a little more comic accurate and shit.
I wonder if we'll get a Daniel Cudmore Colossus again at some point.
But the thing I was going to mention was he had mentioned that the better Sabretooth was in X-Men, played by Lee Schreiber from X-Men Origins Wolverine, which he actually was a really good one.
Yeah,
be fair,
one of the only good things about that movie. But yeah.
Like the weird thing is, like he was doing a really good job in that. Like he deserved to be in a better X-Men movie. I'm going to be fully honest.
Everyone in that movie deserved to be in a better X-Men movie because better X-Men movies should just by default exist instead of
Right,
that
fair
thing.
enough. But he had mentioned, yeah, he thought Lee Schreiber would have been a more interesting one because that version of Sabretooth has such an interesting connection to Wolverine, and since it is Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, technically Sabretooth is the brother of Logan or
I'm
Jimmy.
sure we'll get cameos aplenty here.
I'm just saying, like they are using the original X-Men actor who was like a professional who didn't really play a comic accurate version of Sabretooth. I mean, he looks kind of like him, but
we're
I
getting Kelsey Grammer's Beast back again, which is nice.
I don't think I'm explaining it properly, but I just think if that's my only nitpick, I would say that is the best
Honestly,
thing.
I honestly see no reason why they couldn't both be in here. That being said, I don't want this to be cameo palooza, even though for something like Deadpool it would work more than it does for like Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness.
I do agree with you. I will say, granted, was in this promo, while with the other ones we were getting more of the story and the characters. So I feel like it's a good enough blend. Plus, I feel like everyone is there to be there, like in other movies.
This feels oddly, and I might be. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, like I believe, well, because like it's connecting into the Marvel universe, right? And it does seem like they're interacting with the TVA. So this could be the book he went to when he was erased in the first season. You know what I'm talking about? Like at the end of time with Aboleth and stuff, or Alioth, I think.
Yes, I'm trying to remember the word, but yeah, it seems like the main conceit of this movie is actually a like buddy road trip movie throughout the multiverse, which is interesting and would work for
or at the
Deadpool.
very least in some. I won't say multiverse, but I will say in some place where like forgotten or the variants of the characters from the X-Men movies that are more comic accurate, because it does seem like they're being dressed up like them, like more comic accurate versions, are going to get a chance to shine here, because I think I had watched a new Rockstars video. I don't have anything against them. I don't watch them often, but I watched their breakdown
Yeah.
of the. Or no, wait, was it Screen Crush? I can't remember. Those I'm gonna be honest, those guys.
That's the main problem a lot of people have had with the Fox X-Men movies is they tried so hard to like remove all the comic booky shit from their movies that a lot of people are just like, all you had to do was take the X-Men the animated series and turn it into live action.
Oh, dude. And it still sucks that they didn't use X-Men. They sort of did with the leather black suits, and I got nothing against the black suits specifically. They weren't as bad as I think people said they are, but obviously I think they do like the color.
They annoy me because of what it represents for the studio to have done. What it means for the studio to have done is, let's take this comic book property and remove all the comic booky shit from
Well,
it
it was
and turn
really-
it into a generic sci-fi action movie instead.
It was early 2000s. I'm a little lenient there. I think the issue is obviously the line that was put in. You know, what would you prefer?
The yellow spandex, yeah.
Yeah.
That's not just having no faith in the material. That's actively pissing on anyone who does like the material.
Yeah.
That being said, here, selfishly, I do remember in one of the trailers there was a scene of Deadpool and Wolverine hopping through a portal that looked almost identical to a sling ring portal, a la Doctor Strange.
Yeah, fair enough. God.
So I'm
Okay.
So I'm hoping that much like all the other multiverse oriented movies so far, being, Multiverse of Madness and No Way Home, I'm hoping Doctor Strange at least has a role here, selfishly.
Okay. Anyway, 20 seconds left, so
Mm-hmm. Jimmy Chungus.
This fight, it's not gonna be easy. Maybe nice. You shoot the double, you take him down. Side control, then full mount, and you ground and pound till he makes no sound because he's dead.
Shut the fuck up. Oh my god.
Okay, good luck. I'm a huge fan.
that looks fun.
Yeah. Although again, being a little bit selfish here, I don't want it to make all the money, because I think Marvel in general is expecting this to do like Spider-Man No Way Home or like Captain America Civil War numbers, and I don't want it to, because if it makes like more than double what Multiverse of Madness made, they're just going to abandon everything they set up in their own universe and hyperfixate on the mutants and the X-Men and all the stuff they borrowed from other studios and shit. And I don't want that, because like the correct answer, both for me personally because I enjoy it, but also I think from a writing perspective, is to focus on the weirder aspects of the multiverse, the more like the stuff that isn't just a lazy excuse to do 1,001 cameos, and focusing on or drifting into the more supernatural aspects of the multiverse with stuff like Werewolf by Night, with stuff like Agatha, with stuff like Doctor Strange 3 eventually, would be a good thing. And if an X-Men related property makes all the money, they're just going to end up canning all the stuff that I like in favor of doubling down on the X-Men, which honestly will probably just end up creating the same problem as the Fox X-Men did eventually. Anyway, moving on.
Give me a second. It's loading. Hello?
Sorry. My door randomly opened and there's now a dog in here. So I'm having to keep an eye on him to make sure he doesn't eat a bunch of shit.
Yeah, fair enough.
Hang on. I'll have to actually open the door so he can get out, I think.
I
You need to go out. Yeah. Okay. Okay. There we go. The dog has been dealt with.
all right. Sorry. Okay. All right. So hold on. Let me share it, obviously. But we are going to be seeing the Superman photos that were released. Let me find, because they're a really good. Yep. Set photos that were taken because a few days ago they started production in Cleveland, which actually isn't like a state over from me. Just realized.
Ditto. Because Ohio is like right smack between the two of us, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. Okay, here's the first. But yeah, these are behind the scenes photos that were taken by people. And here's the first image I had seen. I couldn't. So full honesty, I'm using a Twitter account that posted a lot of these images because I could not find a article that had all the images I would want us to see. But here's David Cornswith as Superman. And by God, I am so pissed off that the promo image, the official promo image that was set, that we seen,
was all grim, dark, and scorched and shit.
Because look at this thing. Look at it. This is so much better.
It is much better. Although I'm not the biggest fan of the collar, which I think comes from the New 52. Yeah.
I'm gonna be fully honest. It's got the trunks. It's got brighter colors. I'm fucking happy. I'm gonna take what I can get, given everything I have had to deal with.
It's fine. But coming to it from like an artistic eye and shit, because I can't not. But I do wish it was. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. Well, I also want to point out again, this is like a behind the scenes photo taken by like a paparazzi. So, again, we're always going to take that with a grain of salt. And how
it'll get color corrected and adjusted, and the angle will be better on the actual thing.
Also, this could be just like his first suit, for the movie.
Yeah, this always happens. Although I do wish that if we were gonna get a like proto Superman suit, that we would get something that was a little bit more adjacent to like a literal strongman outfit, because one of the basis of the Superman costume that always gets referenced but never actually gets used in anything is that he based it on strongman outfits. And by he, I mean Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. But they based it on like 1930s, 1920s strongmen that actually existed at the time.
Right.
I would like to see. I would like to see similar to what we got with the Batman. I would like to see at some point a like proto Superman outfit that was actually like cobbled together from an old strongman suit or something, or based on one.
But honestly, it looks really cool. It looks, again, I don't know what they were doing with the promo image, like at all. This looks so much better, you know?
Well, the uncharitable possibility is that they simply don't know what they're working with, which is possible. And something that I've mentioned a couple of times, that I don't think James Gunn really knows what he's working with here. The charitable explanation, and I put that in air quotes, is that maybe they were trying to give like an olive branch to the Snyder Bros, not realizing that the grimdark tone isn't what most of the people who liked Henry Cavill as Superman liked. It was in fact literally the opposite. But before we move to this next image, though, I did want to say one thing that does kind of bother me still about the new suit, or the better look at the suit. I wish it was more skin tight so we could actually see his musculature. I don't know if it's simply the case of David Cornsweet is smaller than Henry Cavill, and so he doesn't have the musculature to show off, or what, but it does kind of bug me that the suit isn't more skin tight to his body. But that's just me.
Got the red trunks, we got colors. I'm gonna take it at this point.
Yeah, no, I
because
know I'm nitpicking, but they'll never learn if somebody doesn't nitpick them. So I'm picking the necessary nits.
Yeah.
God damn it.
This is Mr. Terrific. There was another image. So I know I was a little bit. I know I'm still apprehensive about there being so many other heroes in a Superman movie. But
You know,
I cannot lie. I like the design.
it looks good. James Gunn is not bad at designs, which is all the more reason why that first promo image should not have been a thing. But
I'm still like apprehensive about there being other heroes, but it's fine. He looks good, and I've seen the actor in other stuff. I think he's going to do great.
Yeah. The thing that worries me isn't even necessarily that there are so many characters in the Superman movie. It's there being so many characters in the context of the thing James Gunn said a couple of years ago, which is he doesn't know how to write a Superman movie and he doesn't really want to. And I could see, like, there's a part of me that, like, from a Machiavellian calculation standpoint, is like getting in James Gunn's head and thinking to myself, okay, if I were James Gunn and I didn't want to make a Superman movie, but DC basically forced my hand into making a Superman movie, how I would fix it is shove so many extraneous other characters in said Superman movie that the actual time Superman is the focus is minimal. And the other thing that worries me about there being so many other characters in James Gunn's Superman movie is, and this is another thing, James Gunn tends to work best with ensemble casts. He's never really done a solo superhero movie before.
Well, okay. Hold on. Actually, before you, that actually leads into the next photo.
Mm-hmm.
1 second.
Because I love Guardians of the Galaxy. I really do. It's
okay. Hold on. So here's the first image of Lois Lane, and then Perry White. I have seen both these actors in various things, and they're really good actors. So,
isn't the one who plays Lois the one from Marvelous Mrs. Maisel?
I believe so, and she was also. I know her from The Blacklist.
Yeah. I think she definitely can do it. I'm not really worried about.
So what Lois, I was gonna hold on. Can I?
Sorry.
I was gonna say there are also images of other characters from the Daily Planet, Clark's work friends,
Mhm.
which have not been shown before in live action.
Of course.
More so have not been properly focused on or developed at all.
Mhm.
And yet now they're showing the whole group, like Cat Grant, Pete Lumbar, Ron Troop, Jimmy Olsen.
Elephant in the room time. Is Jimmy ginger?
Hold on, I can find an image. Give me a second. It's Skylar Gizondo's Jimmy Olsen, and it doesn't look like they gave him orange hair dye, unfortunately. Although Skylar why does that name sound familiar?
At least he's not black.
Okay. Don, you might want to rephrase that.
Okay, in context, the reason why I'm saying at least he's not black is because there is a disturbingly accurate trend going on lately where they take any and all excuses to turn a ginger character into a black character for no explicable reason other than stunt casting, effectively, and or ideology. So I would prefer if Jimmy was actually ginger, because accurate portrayal of the character and all, but at least he's not black. They literally even made the animated version of him in recent fucking My Adventures with Superman show. They literally made even his animated version black, so at least Jimmy isn't black this time.
Okay, Skylar Gizondo, I think is how you say it. He's been in a lot of things, actually, now that I'm looking at it. He was in Santa Clarita Diet, Night at the Museum, the 2014 one.
Who did he play in that?
Hold on, I'm looking it up. I think he was Ben Stiller's son in Night at the Museum.
Oh, okay. Now I remember what this actor looks like. Okay, if he's the son character, then now I remember what he looks like.
Not the young one in the third movie when they went to the Museum of London.
Right, yeah. But I know who you mean. But in any case, would have preferred if he were ginger, or would have preferred if they had dyed his hair accordingly. But it could be much worse, and has been regularly much worse. And I've even seen pictures from the new live action Hercules that Disney's doing, where they made even Herc black. So there's that.
Sorry, I'm like, yeah, Santa Clarita Diet. Oh, he's in the Amazing Spider-Man.
I don't remember him from that at all.
Oh, he was a little kid brother of Gwen Stacy. He's referred to as Howard Stacy.
Oh God. Kids that were little kids in movies like not that long ago are now adults, and that bugs me. I'm old.
Oh, he was also in the Three Stooges movie in 2011.
Oh God, that thing.
I liked that one. I thought it was funny.
It could have been worse, but it wasn't a very good send up to the Stooges.
Okay, but yeah. Okay, hold on. I think there was an image of Lex Luthor, like Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor, which I think that's actually pretty good casting.
Although in future, can we please move the fuck away from Lex, please? Lex or
Why?
Zod, because literally the only villains that anyone remembers Superman having when they make movies is Lex and or Zod. Superman has an entire rogues gallery, and we've never once gotten a live-action Brainiac on the big screen yet,
Right.
and it bugs me.
Ooh. Okay. For everyone who always bitches about Clark Kent and Superman, the Clark Kent disguise, since I showed the image of Superman earlier, here's an image of Clark Kent. David Cornsworth as Clark Kent. Again, this is like someone who took a snapshot of it. So
Interesting. Like, my only worry at this point, based on these images, is that they might lean a little bit too heavily into the Christopher Reeve version and not let this version be its own thing.
what do you mean?
He looks almost exactly like Christopher Reeve as Clark Kent, which obviously
I disagree.
because this is the biggest problem with this version of Superman. Regardless, it has to find a way to develop its own sense of identity because it's already standing in the shadow of the ruin of Henry Cavill's era, and like while I can see some utility in like reverse engineering the Christopher Reeve version, at some point the new adaptation has to stand on its own merits and become its own thing. Otherwise, there's literally no point in doing it.
Okay, so I did 2 images just again to point out to shut everyone up about the Clark Kent disguise and how it doesn't work. Here's an image of David Cornsworth as both Superman and Clark Kent. Like seriously, like
Are you going to click the thing so that it goes full screen so I can actually see it?
well, they're 2 separate images, so I was just okay. There's Superman, Clark Kent.
I mean, obviously, the juxtaposition between them is a key part of this. So,
Well, I think it's also noticeable with like the hair is that with Clark Kent, it's more. I would almost say it's more natural and less styled. You know,
Yeah.
the curls and stuff.
Yeah.
Although, I guess okay, a little nitpick, because we have not seen it since Christopher Reeve, or well, maybe Dean Cain if we want to go with with TV as well if we're counting live actions.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't look like David Cornsworth has a spit curl for Superman. Although it could be the image of this, it could be the angle of this image that we're not seeing it.
He also, and this is something I've noticed, but I wasn't going to be petty about until this moment, in all the pictures, he does look a little bit small to play this character.
Don, you're always petty, so why are you apologizing now?
Because I don't want to come off as overly harsh or overly nitpicky, but he does look a bit too skinny. Is the thing.
To be fair, you and I have had this discussion with Superman. Is that he shouldn't be like ultra buff, actually, considering.
If we're going off of the you have to actually challenge yourself in order to build muscle thing, sure. But I think it's been established in the comics for a long time that the musculature he has less to do with him actually straining himself and more to do with the way his body actually metabolizes the energy of the yellow sun. So
we have I think we've come to a consensus of that more than likely he would have more of a swimmer's body then
if we're going off of the you have to challenge yourself in order to build musculature thing, yes. But if we're going off of the comic excuse for the musculature that has existed for like decades at this point, it has less to do with him actually challenging himself and more to do with the way his body metabolizes the yellow sun radiation, which is a perfectly valid excuse as far as I'm concerned. Mostly because Superman should be goddamn eye candy, if nothing else. And this one does seem a little bit slim. And yes, part of my ability to notice that is probably because Henry Cavill was built in a lab somewhere in order to play the character of Superman and is genetically perfect for the character. But as I previously alluded to before, let's not act like this movie doesn't have to defend itself from living in the Henry Cavill shadow. And given that it does necessarily have to defend itself from any less than favorable comparisons between it and the Henry Cavill version, he should have gotten in better shape for the role. It's a similar thing that I said about Zachary Levi's Shazam when those images first came out. If you're going to be portraying these larger than life heroes, who in the case of both Shazam and Superman have strength as a fundamental feature of their, power set, they need to actually be literally larger than life.
You done?
Yes. Also, you sounded literally almost exactly like Angel Dust when you said that. Because there's a moment in the pilot where Angel says that to Baggy, and you sounded literally almost exactly like Angel Dust just now.
How about now?
No, now you're fine. It's just the way that hit my ear sounded almost exactly like what Angel Dust said to Baggy in the pilot.
One, I want to point out those two, like the one from the pilot and the one from. So my voice might be more similar to Michael Kovac, the pilot voice actor for Angel Dust.
Although, in fairness, both, I think they do a good job of mimicking each other.
I can hear the difference.
I actually think that as far as similarity to their pilot voices, Alistair actually comes off the worst in terms of parallels between him and the pilot voice actor. Not saying I have any problems with the series voice for Alistair. I'm just saying that if we're comparing the version from the pilot and the version from the series, I think Alistair is the most noticeably different.
I think if you're really paying attention and have watched the pilot many times, which I assume you have.
Well, that and the fact that the voice actor for the pilot prior to, in the 4 years prior to releasing the show, did a lot of fan work for Alistair because he really liked playing the character, which all the props in the world to that. And so I've heard Alistair's voice actor more in song form than I have in.
Oh, that's not even like that. To be fair, that is the voice actor who does, because the voice actor in the pilot could not sing like that.
Yeah, so they actually got two.
Yeah, Black Griffin, who is a YouTuber who does a lot of impressions and singing.
Yeah, but in any case,
by the way, great YouTuber. I totally recommend listening to him. He does amazing work.
And again, he's done a lot of work in the 4 years prior to the Amazonification of Has Been, doing songs for Alistair, and it's awesome. Anyway. Although in fairness, I'm not sure if he is the same voice actor who does some of the songs, because the voice actor who I like best for Alistair is the one who sings the bit in Smile Like You Mean It. Smile Like You Mean It is my favorite Alistair song.
Oh, Paranoid DJ.
Yes.
Yeah, I've listened to him too. Guy, that guy made a lot of interesting songs, and some songs were even used by Vivzy Pop.
Yeah, and I'm sure that I actually think that one of the main reasons why the voice actor was changed apart from obviously union issues for the series, is I think honestly Vibsy Pop got more used to Paranoid DJ's version of Alistair than she did the original song voice actor for Alistair in the pilot. Because actually if you compare, if you plot the voice actors for Alistair on a graph, Black Griffin's voice is much lower and more like bass or baritone oriented. Whereas,
so question. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but so question, because you know Paranoid DJ, how many of the songs have you listened to, or you just listened to the Alistair one?
I'm an Alistair fanboy. I've listened to all of the Alistair ones. I do know about Addict. I am aware that Addict is a thing.
Oh, that's that's not Paranoid DJ though. That was an official thing. There is a Lucifer song. Again, this was when Lucifer before you saw Lucifer on Amazon in the actual show.
Before Vibsy Pop got a bunch of shit for making all the dad characters shit and decided to make a dad who wasn't shit.
No. What? Not that. It's just like, again, when we all thought he was going to be like super serious, super scary, super powerful, all that.
Again, before she got shit for making all her dad characters abusive and decided to make a non-abusive dad character.
I mean, he's still aloof and distant and kind of an
okay, but okay, I'm going to literally play Sympathy for the Devil at this exact moment.
I'm not saying he's a bad dad. I'm just saying that comparatively, in defense of series Lucifer's form of like abuse, quote unquote, is a neglectful kind of abuse, whereas the original concept I think she had for Lucifer was going to be a far more aggressively abusive Lucifer rather than Emily's neglectful one. I don't know about that because I remember there was something she had mentioned before in a live stream that, again, a lot has changed. I will admit to that. I don't think he was ever going to be abusive. I just think he never really supported Charlie's dream of the redemption thing. But
which honestly, I like the way they have it set up in the show more, because the way they have the lore set up in Has Been, the idea that Lucifer and not the other angels was the one who gave humanity free will because he thought they should have it, and therefore there being a parallel between Lucifer's desire to give humanity free will in the first fucking place and Charlie's desire to kind of reform the way they use it. I like the parallels with that, and I especially like the way it's handled in More Than Anything with the "I've tried this all before, my dreams were too hard to defend" thing. That was really, I really like that parallel between them, and it was.
Back when again, it was like the more serious take on Lucifer. He was more the, well, like biblically accurate Lucifer, I guess, from his personality.
That sort of depends on what you mean, because Lucifer as the adversary of God is not actually a thing in the Bible.
Okay. Paradise Lost, then, something like that. The kind of devil we're more used to.
Mm-hmm.
More so than the lovable goofball that he is in the actual show. Paranoid DJ did a song called "Change the Order" that was for Lucifer. I think it's rather good, and again, I will admit that might be one of the few things that kind of made me somewhat. I don't
sour on show Lucifer.
Not just not disappointed, not sour, not. I'm just. Again, I guess I'm just so used to more serious takes on the devil that this take just kind of throws me for a loop a bit, if that makes sense.
But this is the interesting thing, and I think Vibsy and I are on kind of the same page with this.
Oh.
Lucifer in the Bible is not, capital D, the devil. In the book of Job, he is explicitly an adversary of humanity on God's payroll. He's meant to act as the tempter so that mankind can refute his temptations. And everywhere else in the Bible, whenever the enemy of God is referenced, it's not actually referring to Lucifer or even the fallen angels. It's referring to the Leviathan, the like embodiment of like chaos and entropy that God had to vanquish in order to create the world in the first fucking place.
Well, also that depends on, because you and I have had a discussion about Leviathan of, has Leviathan been defeated, or because it's mentioned that Leviathan is also a prince of one of the rings of hell. I believe it was.
He's
right?
the demon of envy and Peter Binfield's classification of demons. I do believe. I want to say Leviathan is envy, because Belphegor is sloth. Ammon is rage. Mammon or anger. Mammon is greed.
Did you already say Belphegor is sloth?
Yeah, Belphegor is sloth. Mammon is greed. Leviathan, I still want to say is envy.
Beelzebub is gluttony.
Yeah.
Lucifer's pride. How many is that so far?
I think we've got all of them. Or
What
are we
about
missing?
Satan's wrath? Satan is wrath.
Yeah. Which
Okay, so
interestingly in medieval demonology, even in the medieval like Catholic conception of demonology, Lucifer and Satan are actually two different entities. As in they are listed in grimoires as separate entities who can be summoned into different ways.
yeah, I was I recently learned that. I won't lie, but I am aware of that now. So
Which honestly I do appreciate. Vibsy Pop, like obviously she does play with shit because I think she turns Beelzebub into a woman, doesn't she?
a hellhound bee hybrid.
Yeah. So yeah. She obviously does play with the lore and stuff, and that's cool and everything. But I do like the ways in which she's actually like more loyal and more like I'm gonna be controversial here and say biblically literate than most of the faithful. Like people got so royally pissed off at the inclusion of Lilith before Eve, but if you actually look into the Old Testament and also into the Midrash tradition, Lilith has been around a long fucking time.
Right. Also, right. I was gonna mention that Beelzebub was voiced by Kesha.
I don't know why that works in my head, but it works in my head.
Yeah, it's. I find it a bit. I mean, for one episode in like season 1, they actually got Norman Reedus to play a character as well.
I really like the way in which even when the Helliverse is being like subversive or satirical, it still honestly kind of works in a surreal way. But anyway, that's me once again driving everything back to Hazbin Hotel because Hazbin Hotel lives in my head rent free. Moving on to the next thing.
So this is the official trailer for season 1 of Batman Cape Crusader, which is a project that is being developed by Bruce Timm. I believe. Hold on. Let's check the description here. Welcome to Gotham City, where the corrupt outnumber the good, criminals run rampant, and law-abiding citizens live in a constant state of fear. Forged in the fire of tragedy, wealthy socialite Bruce Wayne becomes something both more and less than human. The Batman. His one-man crusade attracts unexpected allies within the GCPD and City Hall, but his heroic actions spawn deadly, unforeseen ramifications.
Now, the elephant in the room question time. Was this one of the things that Kevin Conroy actually managed to get to before he died, or no?
No. Hamish Linklater is playing Bruce Wayne / Batman.
That's because whenever I think of Bruce Timm and Batman, I always think of Kevin Conroy, as do I'm sure the majority of the planet. So
Right.
it is a little bit
this
sad
was
that Kevin couldn't survive long enough to do this.
Yeah.
but oh well.
If I remember correctly, there was talking about how this is supposed to be like a more mature take on the animated series, kind of like it's still its own thing, like its own continuity and all that. Because
Mhm.
the design of the Batman looks more in line with like the classic Golden Age, like his first adventures kind of deal.
Yeah, the creature meant to bring fear into the hearts of criminals, etc.
Well, no, like the short purple gloves, the long, the
Right.
angular
Yeah.
cowl thing. Yeah.
Which I guess does make me question whether we're going to ever see Batman, wielding a gun or not. Because in the Golden Age, he did sometimes before people thought about it for 5 seconds and actually came up with a, character-based rationale for him to do what he does.
There was actually a comic where he was flying by and this giant creature, I think it was supposed to be like a Frankenstein homage, he threw a noose down to take it away and basically flew off with a corpse hanging from his biplane.
Good old Batwing.
No, it was just a prop plane at the time.
But yeah. Anyway, I'm interested to see a more mature version of the animated series because I think I'm not alone in saying that the animated series tends to be rather mature just by its own. Like, the animated series was already pretty freaking mature on its own merits. So I'm hoping this doesn't tread too far into grimdark territory.
I had seen some discussions about it, and I'm somewhat in agreement. Granted, I think we would have to watch the show itself to see what's going on. But someone had mentioned that the original animated series, because it had the limitations of being a children's show, even though it did push the envelope many times, it was still relatively mature. But in the context of mature adult cartoons today, that could mean excessive blood and violence and
I just don't want Batman to swear, because if Batman
Right.
swears, it's going to pull me right the fuck out of everything.
Right. So, because I think we can both agree that adults, in air quotes, adult cartoons are far more juvenile than like cartoons aimed for a younger audience or meant for younger audiences.
Used to be, yeah.
Yeah, it's weird, right? Like,
I mean, I think honestly, writing in general for shows in general has gotten way more immature over the years. Because
I don't get it. Like,
I think because of the inevitable pandering to the lowest common denominator, I guess.
well,
But
okay. So the weird thing is, I can think of a good. I mean, it's a middle ground between like Arcane. I've mentioned Arcane before. It's like a League of Legends show, sort of. But it's. I mean, it has cursing and stuff. It feels like kind of like an HBO show, like early 2010s, maybe. Like it has cursing, it has violence, it has.
Another good example to get at would be Warren Ellis's Netflix Castlevania.
Right, yeah. It's just like I think the main issue is. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but I think we're in both on the agreement is like a mature show like what a mature show is supposed to be, obviously, is like the ones we had mentioned. Like it can have swearing, it can have sexy scenes, I guess, and violence, but it can't. It has to handle.
Modern day adult cartoons have a very teenager centric definition of adulthood, whereas back in the day, shows that were ostensibly made for children, shows like the DC animated universe, shows like Gargoyle, shows like SWAT Cats, shows like the Man of Action series, Ben 10, Generator Rex, all those, Secret Saturdays, the list goes on.
Okay, 2000 He-Man, 2011 Thundercats.
Yeah,
Thundercats, dude, that was...
2002 He-Man, 2011 Thundercats, the Teen Titans, Glen Origami Show, etc. They all managed to not only be mature for kids cartoons, but I would honestly, and by honestly I mean literally, put up any one of those shows against modern day dramas targeted at adults, and I would bet dollars to donuts that any of the cartoons I just listed are more mature, more well-rounded, more three-dimensional, and more literally adult in an intellectual sense than any of the like modern day dramas made for adults on like network TV.
So I do want to bring this up just because it's a universal. It is kind of the universal mature cartoon. And by mature, I obviously mean one that handles topics and discusses them in a thought-provoking, intellectual way. Avatar: The Last Airbender, because after that show came out, a lot of cartoons, a lot of shows tried to be like that.
Yeah. And not even the original creative team managed it. Cough, cough, Korra sucked, cough.
I don't know. I'm wondering how many of the original team worked on that though. But yeah, like I would say that is sort of the gold standard in terms of modern cartoons, relatively, for like mature storytelling.
In terms of stuff that we grew up with, that actually, because I mean, literally, there was an episode in Avatar: The Last Airbender that literally taught 12-year-olds the Eastern concept of the chakras, and did so in an actual like well-rounded three-dimensional. Like it's honestly like an intro to Buddhism, that episode. Unironically.
I would also point out like one of the earlier episodes in season 1 when Aang goes back to the Southern Air Temple, his home, and finds out about the Nomad genocide.
Oh yeah, the genocide.
Yeah,
and sadly and ironically, even the live action adaptation of Avatar, which I'm not gonna say it was I'm not gonna say it was terrible, because it wasn't terrible. It wasn't as good as I think the show deserved, but even the live action adaptation of Avatar: The Last Airbender cut so many corners, both like dramatically and like character orientedly, and like just three-dimensionality of the like subtext and shit in its adaptation of that episode, that the original show did not. And it's kind of sad, actually, that we've gotten so topsy-turvy that even live action adaptations of shit that should be able to use the original thing as a springboard are actively worse than the original animated versions now.
I mean, I've heard good things about One Piece, but that's an anime thing. So.
Yeah, no, I've heard good things about One Piece, and by all accounts, it seems to be a decent adaptation of the original show.
Anyway,
but
what I was
nevertheless, 9 times out of 10, live action adaptations will be worse than their animated counterparts now, and 9 times out of 10, any of the shows that we've talked about, be it Avatar, be it the DC animated universe, be it any of the action cartoons of the 90s and early 2000s. They are more three-dimensional, well-rounded, and genuinely thought-provoking than any of the dramas targeted at adults on network television.
Right. And I guess I do also have to bring this up, just given Bruce Timm, and no offense to him, I still respect the guy. He created a whole generation of things, or allowed a whole
Mhm.
generation of things to happen.
Mhm.
Granted, there were other people there, obviously. I'm not going to short
Yeah.
sight, but he
Which-
kind of was the.
We'll get into, but yeah.
But relatively recently, within the last decade or so, or I guess like 2000, the 2010s, kind of.
Mhm.
He's somewhat, when he's left kind of to his own devices, or allowed a little too much control without someone like pushing him back. It's kind of similar to George Lucas or something.
Yeah,
he's
I
given-
was just gonna, I was just gonna bring that up, the George
Yeah.
Lucas syndrome.
Yeah.
Sometimes in order for a creative endeavor to be balanced, you have to have someone who will tell you no, who will filter your ideas into a better form. And I would,
Right. So
while we're talking about this, I would say the same thing for Neil Gaiman, because if what he's done to the Sandman IP isn't any indication, he should thank his lucky stars that he had the creative limitations he did when he made the original run of the Sandman, because every time he revisits it now, it gets worse.
all right. So what was I going to say? Right. Because I think we all remember the Killing Joke movie, which relatively was not bad. It was the beginning part of it that kind of fucked with it, which was something completely original that Bruce Timm had added.
Yeah,
Which
it
was
tried to be edgy. Yeah, which does seem to be one of Bruce Timm's recent failings. Is again,
I mean,
I honestly,
when he
I
was,
honest-
I mean, the time he, hold on, I'm sorry, just to bring up kind of a counterpoint to that. The time he was edgy was when he made Justice League Gods and Monsters, and I think it legitimately worked well. I think they for Killing Joke, so it makes me wonder what happened between characters and the Killing Joke.
well, and that's the
That-
thing that's the thing I was going to bring up. Going back to our George Lucas analogy or our Neil Gaiman analogy, it seems like Bruce Timm had at least a little bit of a chip on his shoulder about being stifled or censored during the original animated series run. And so now that he does have the cachet to be Bruce motherfucking Timm, he's honestly bouncing back a little bit too hard in the other direction, where because he was so resentful of the like kidification of the animated series, he's actually overcorrecting now and going overly edgy to some degree.
Kidification, dude. I'm not gonna lie. I was watching that show, and I'm realizing
No,
a
I know.
lot of things.
I'm not saying it was kidified, but I'm saying from Bruce
I'm
Timm's
saying,
perspective
like,
that it might have been.
I'm just saying. No, that I'm just saying, like, I think he is wrong in that sense.
No, and he is, but going off of the impression that I get from him post Killing Joke, as you say, my suspicion is that much like George Lucas or Neil Gaiman, he actively resents at least some portion of the creative input that the producers had in the animated series and is now overcorrecting by being overly edgy. And because he is so much older now than he was when he made the original series, he's also kind of doing a how do you do fellow kids and assuming that the things that would have been edgy 15 years ago when he was much, 15, 20, 30 years ago when he was much younger are still edgy now, and it's coming off maybe as out of touch instead of actually boundary pushing like he wants it to.
Right. So But yeah, again, just to point out, the DCAU, specifically like Justice League Unlimited, was excessively horny. Now that I'm looking back on that show.
Oh yeah, no, there were adult jokes out and aside from the wazoo there, which
I mean, I'm not complaining.
Yeah, no, which I love. I love. Yeah, no, I love absolutely that. Going back to what we were saying about the juxtaposition between modern day allegedly adult dramas and freaking kid shows that we grew up with. I love that the kid shows that we grew up with, particularly the action cartoon genre, treated us as much like adults as they could get away with. I love growing up with that. And I think it genuinely was a genuinely better time to be alive.
I know I meant that Azula was kind of my like Shigo from Kim Possible and Azula from Avatar: The Last Airbender was kind of my awakening, which I will say that they played a major part. But God, but like the women in Justice League Unlimited.
Oh yeah, no, they were absolutely beautiful. That being said, I will once again bloodbend Azula to death if she ever fucks with you, because.
Anyway, we got it. I'm gonna have to go to bed pretty soon. So.
Batnana.
Batnana. Yeah.
Asking the question on everyone's mind these days: what do you think about the Batman?
This whole city's gone to hell in a handbasket.
Well, he's breaking the law, ain't he? So they ought to catch that freak and lock him up.
I won't say it's gonna be.
So it feels like it is in like a pseudo well, no, it does feel like it's in the 1940s, obviously with like the talking, the designs. Hell, even we saw like the golden age kind of Clayface look. Briefly.
Which I mean, Batman the Animated Series literally pioneered the concept of Dark Deco, so it's not surprising that that's the vibe they're going for.
Yeah, it's not surprising. It looks good. It looks very. Obviously, they're using like the new Batman Adventures Bruce Timm art style, which is fine because iconic and it works.
I mean, either art style works fine for me. I don't really have. There's nothing really wrong with either art style, frankly.
No, I'm not saying there is. I'm just saying like, obviously, it's the one that's been developed the most and kind of took its own form, kind of became the standard. Bruce Timm
I will say I miss the original Batman the Animated Series art style though.
I won't lie. Yes, it does have its appeal. I think I understand why they did this because it's a little more simplistic. You can do a little more animation with it.
It's a lot easier to draw week to week than the version that has so many lines. You would have to spend hours.
Yeah, it was hyper. It was hyper detailed, which again respect, and I liked. But I understand why they went with this one, and I'm not complaining with it because it was still a really cool design. And it makes the series that more iconic.
I do hope that detail-oriented art styles do make a comeback because, like, outside of anime or pseudo anime, you really don't get that so much anymore, and it annoys me.
Well, I guess you can make an argument for Castlevania X-Men '97, as the most current one.
Anime or pseudo anime. But in general, I
think the issue is like it does certainly come down to budget, because I think you could go a little more detailed when you have the bigger budget to be able to animate it more, make it more fluid.
And that's true too. And therefore, fuck you, animation industry, for shortchanging your talent. But as a general rule, I really miss the almost pseudo hyper realistic art style that we got in things like the 2002 He-Man or the 2011 Thundercats or basically all of the action cartoons that we grew up with.
Anyway, shall we?
Yeah, Batnana.
Easy, but catching criminals is what we do. So this one dresses up like Dracula, so what? We're gonna take him down. What do we know about this Batman?
He's been beating the tar out of muggers and dope peddlers out there the last few weeks.
He's mostly been seen at night driving that hot rod of his 100 miles an hour.
And now he's even attacking him.
Oh god, the old school Batmobile. I'm having all the feels about the old school Batmobile. I love
like
the
how
old school Batmobile so much.
Right. I like how they're using because Gotham's supposed to be in Jersey. Like, it's legitimately been stated in comics
Yeah,
and shit that it's in Jersey.
The Jersey accent, yeah.
Or, well, I would argue it's more of a New York. It's like a northern East Coast accent. Let's be fair.
Well, an urban East Coast accent,
Fair enough.
because it doesn't occur outside of cities. I know. I live in the goddamn middle of nowhere. You're more likely to get people with a pseudo Texan accent around here than you are people with a Jersey or New Yorker accent.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Hey,
Mhm.
but I like that little attention to detail, and also it does sound like kind of 1940s ish or maybe 30s. You know.
Mhm. But in relation to the thing we were just saying about God, I love seeing the old school Batmobile back again. Obviously, the Batman the Animated Series was very heavily influenced by the two Tim Burton movies. And God, how I wish Tim Burton could have done all four of them. But that was the Batmobile that I grew up with, and I've seen many Batmobiles that came before that Batmobile, and I've seen many Batmobiles that came after that Batmobile. But genuinely, the two Tim Burton movies and the Batman the Animated Series Batmobile is still to me peak Batmobile. And I've never seen anyone even come close to changing my mind on that. And not for lack of my mind being open to potentially more bad. Honestly, if I were to give James Gunn some advice on how to do another incarnation of the Batmobile that would at least be an updating of that peak Batmobile style, there's a car that actually exists. It's called the Bugatti Veyron. And all I'm saying is, James, if you want to upscale the Batmobile even more, take the Bugatti Veyron that actually exists and trick it the fuck out with all the bat bells and whistles. That is a perfect basis for a Batmobile. And that would be a good way of continuing the Batmobile design-wise forward, having taken pointers from the two Tim Burton movies and the animated series.
Banana.
The Bugatti Veyron is the closest thing IRL to an actual Batmobile. But anyway, Batnana.
Attacking our brave police.
Nice car.
This man is not a hero, he's a criminal. And his time in Gotham is...
Mischief afoot, sir?
3 explosions in 2 weeks. Peculiar. There's something more going on here.
Okay, I don't mind the sound of new Batman. Kevin Conroy will always and forever be Batman in all of our hearts and souls, but as far as Batman voice actors go, if it can't be Kevin, because, well, he had a lot of, not being alive time schedule on his schedule, then this is at least, I think, an attempt to capture some of the same magic. So that's good.
Hold on. Oh, holy shit. Okay, so the voice actor, because I did read his name earlier, but I wasn't sure who it was. Hamish Linklater. He's been in a few things. He's one of those actors that when you see him, you know who he is. Like, he's been in stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He was the priest in Midnight Mass in 2021.
Okay.
I'm looking at something else that you would have seen.
Did he have any other voice work on his resume?
hold on. But yeah, he was in.
Hmm.
If you remember, if anyone, obviously,
Hmm.
but okay, I'm looking. He was in a Marvel. He was in a podcast series playing Sandman.
As in Flint Marco, I assume.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Marvel Wastelanders Doom. It was a podcast series. He played Sandman in 20. It was in 2022.
Because actually,
Looking
he
for-
wouldn't. Speaking of different Sandmen, if they ever did like an audio drama series of Wesley Dobbs, the Golden Age Sandman, he wouldn't be a bad choice for that.
Mhm. Yeah, so he hasn't had much voice acting experience, but he is still a good actor. It doesn't sound too bad here.
Like I said, if it can't be Kevin, I don't mind this guy's voice. Obviously,
To
in
be fair,
in
he
a better
sounded.
world, it would be Kevin still, but it's
To be
we
fair,
don't live in that
originally
world.
when I had heard him speaking, it sounded like the guy who voiced Batman in the Doom That Came to Gotham movie, which was
Which
the
I
guy
still
who.
haven't seen, that, and I don't own it yet, so I need to sort that out
Uh,
at some point.
it should be on HBO Max or Max, I think it's called now.
I shall have to look it up later, but
Right.
yeah, I
Which
still haven't seen
that
or owned that yet.
that voice actor was the guy who played Nick in Grimm, like the main character.
Ah, not a
So they
bad
have,
choice.
yeah, they have similar voices, like the guy who's voicing Bruce here and the one who voiced him in that one and the
Mhm.
Doom That Came to Gotham. But yeah, he doesn't sound too bad. He's got that dark, gravelly voice, but I am curious what his Bruce Wayne will sound like because usually they're because that was also a thing I liked about Kevin Conroy. You know, is he was able to like shift
They
between.
make an effort to make them sound different, yeah,
Yeah,
without doing the cliched voice changer thing.
or the background.
Yeah, but it's slightly off topic here, but this discussion of Batman made me think of what we were discussing earlier with the James Gunn Superman thing. I support the fan casting of Jensen Ackles, even though I will always and forever hear Dean Winchester.
He
I
did.
do. I do.
He has voiced. I mean, Jensen has already voiced Batman.
Yeah, I know he has, but even though I will always and forever hear Dean Winchester, probably until the day that I die, when Jensen Ackles talks, he is a good choice and a good fan casting for the new Batman. If James Gunn wants to heed the fandom, which he should, because not heeding the fandom would be stupid.
I've also heard Alan Richardson.
Him, I don't like so much for Batman. He would be an amazing Aquaman.
He was already Aquaman in Smallville.
Yes, and he would still be a good Aquaman if they decided to bring him back to the role.
Mm.
Though, frankly, as long as Jason Momoa wants to continue being Arthur, he will be Arthur.
Anyway, shall we? I again, man, I gotta get to bed soon. So
yeah, Batman.
Batman.
You know, it's too much that needs to get.
Don't run this court anymore. The Jester does.
Bang! Look out! We could get more.
On Pia.
Mm-hmm.
And for those who know who Green Arrow villain, but now he's just kind of popping around in comics
Mhm.
more. And
Yeah.
but it is a killer of vigilantes, like superheroes, like serial killer. Goes out there a mask or something as a trophy, and all he ever says is on P words, you know.
Mhm. That's his gimmick.
You know,
As an obvious reference to the visual automatopoeia that used to exist in especially like Silver Age comics.
just bring that back on us. Anyway, yeah, he's fairly interesting. I mean, there's nothing too much on his background. It's because, for one thing, it comes to reveal that he has a life outside it, but like family and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And this is kind of like, you know, like how a lot of serial killers are.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no explanation on why he does it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Which, again,
Yeah.
so.
Anyway, you have to sleep, so we have to bat Nana.
Right. Yeah, it looks good so far. Yeah.
On the streets of Gotham. This is a losing battle. 100 other monsters will show up to replace anyone you take down. They'll know I'm coming for them.
I do really like his voice, actually.
Yeah, it really works. Also, the guy who's voicing Harvey Dent is the guy who voiced Batman in Batman the Brave and the Bold.
Yeah.
Which is cool, and it shows that this, well, Bruce Timm, is paying homage to a lot of things.
Which, I mean, that's something very much up Bruce Timm's alley, so it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the music too used for this, and it kind of makes me wonder what the soundtrack for this is going to be, because it sounds really good.
Mm-hmm.
Because clearly they can't use like licensed songs, because a lot of the kind of music that you would play didn't exist in the 1940s or 30s.
Mm-hmm.
Like you'd be literally just be able to use show tunes if you wanted to make it diegetically.
Yeah. Also, they shouldn't use licensed songs.
No,
period.
yeah, I know. I'm just saying, like, it's if. Yeah, I'm always going to be a proponent. I'm always going to be one who advocates for, if you're going to use if you're going to do trailer music, use music from the actual like thing you're having the trailer for.
Yeah. Don't just have it in the trailer and then over the credits. Because the general lack of use for the just general lack of use for like music themes bothers me now.
Yeah.
Also, title sequences. Let there be title sequences. God damn it.
Yeah. I mean, animated series still do well, mostly.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually live actions that's kind of stopped.
Yeah, but while we're talking about things that need to be brought back from when we were kids, title sequences.
Or intro sequences, I think is what they're called.
Yeah, but in any case.
Banana. August 1st. We might review that because, well, Don and I both have Prime, right?
Yes. So yeah, there will be reviews if we decide to review it.
Yeah.
Although again, we might have to move the podcast around because I might be busy that weekend.
August 1st. The
Yeah,
show comes
because-
out August.
because the thing that I'm probably gonna end up doing for my birthday lasts for 2 weeks. Starts like the day after my birthday and goes through like August. So we might have to move the
Nice.
podcast around 2 weeks, but
Just anyway, so I just want to mention that next few weeks, possibly or hopefully, we will be moving the podcast permanently to nights at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Mhm.
Yeah, so with like in the next 2 or so weeks, we will be doing that, and that's just how it'll be for the future. And so with that, folks, I want to say goodbye, adios, aloha, avideze, sayonara, peace, cheers, and
shalom and fuck off.